Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. Just imagine that an inadequate rich son breaks into your house, into your fortress, who claims that he is taking your wife with him for a couple of nights. How would you react? In addition, he begins to openly threaten. I had thoughts of pouncing on him and boxing on his arrogant face, but I decided to act differently. I wasn't in the best mood as I concluded loading my tools into my pickup truck that Thursday afternoon. The client I had been working with for the past 2 weeks seemed indecisive about the staircase project. He continuously requested changes to the initial plan, and the latest modification requested that morning was so extensive that I had to dismantle a significant portion of the work I had already completed. Additionally, I had to consult with the architect and engineer because accommodating the client's latest whim required a redraw of the structural plans. As a result, the following day would unexpectedly be a day off. I'm Kenneth Morrison, the main artist and owner of a small woodworking carpentry shop specializing in designing and constructing high-end staircases. My customers are rich people who own big houses, hotels, restaurants, and offices. They pay more than $50,000 for a special staircase made by me. I'm 34 years old and married to Daphne Tupper, who's 29. She's a successful lawyer at Kramer, Boylan & Hendricks, a law firm that deals with business and intellectual property law. We haven't had kids yet because Daphne wants to focus on her career first. When I got home at 4:30 p.m., I was surprised to see Daphne's car in the driveway. Usually, she works late on Thursdays to have a shorter day on Fridays. I came in through the back door, like I usually do after working at a construction site, and noticed there was a small problem with the water pressure. I found it strange that Daphne might be taking a shower upstairs since she usually showers in the morning or before bed. After a quick change into house clothes, I headed upstairs to investigate why my wife was home so early on a Thursday afternoon. As I suspected, Daphne had recently finished showering and was now donning some alluring black fishnet stockings. A brand new black dress lay on the bed, patiently awaiting its turn to be worn. "Hey, honey, why are you here so early? Am I forgetting something? Do we have plans tonight that slipped my mind?" I inquired. She regarded me with an expression I hadn't seen before, a touch of nervousness evident, though she made an effort to conceal it. Letting out a sigh, she replied, "No, Kenneth, you haven't forgotten anything. I'm going out tonight and you're not. I'll be gone until Sunday afternoon, spending the weekend with Derek Kramer." What are you talking about? Is it a work trip?" I asked. "No, Kenneth, it's not for work. Derek booked a hotel suite for us. I'll be back next week, but this weekend is for him," she replied, sounding determined, though her words sounded practiced. "No, you can't. I don't want my wife spending a weekend with another man." "What is this nonsense?" I protested. "Well, you better accept it, Kenneth, because that's what Derek wants. And I advise you not to cross him," she chuckled. "I see. You're willingly a part of this plan. You want me to just accept it, swallow my feelings and let you go, and then you'll be my faithful wife again after this weekend," I retorted, sarcasm dripping from my words. "I never said it's only for this weekend. Derek has mentioned he wants it to happen from time to time. So yes, deal with it and keep quiet. Trust me, your life will be much simpler if you go along with it," she declared. "We'll see about that. I won't tolerate this, Daphne. You better think about what you're doing, because I won't let that arrogant guy control my life. If you believe I'm a pawn, you can manipulate without any objection from me. You're in for a rude awakening," I warned. By then, she had finished preparing for the evening. I headed downstairs, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and noticed a Mercedes parking in front of the house. Mr. Smug Derek himself walked up to the front door and rang the bell. "Kenneth, that's Derek. Can you answer the door?" she yelled from upstairs. Quickly, I entered a code into the back door alarm panel, set up my cell phone for video recording, and put it in my t-shirt pocket to capture everything. Then I waited in the living room. I had known Derek Kramer since Daphne started working for CBH 3 years ago. Our first meeting was at their office's Christmas party. Derek, a man in his 42nd, seemed confident and friendly with his fellow partners, flirtatious and smooth with female employees and the wives of male employees. However, in the presence of his male employees and the husbands of his female employees, his demeanor, who said arrogance and contempt, I instantly disliked the guy. Daphne stormed down the stairs visibly angry and opened the door. I observed the scene from the living room nursing my beer. "I'm sorry for the delay, Derek. I don't know where my husband's manners are," she said, adopting a subservient demeanor. She lowered her voice to say something else to Derek, but I couldn't hear it from where I was. "Hey, Dusty boy, I hear you have an issue with Daphne spending the weekend with me," he thundered, resembling a school principal addressing a child, as he entered the living room to confront me. I couldn't believe the audacity of this guy, thinking he was the boss in my own house. "Hey, shithead, get out of my house or I'll call the cops," I declared, clenching my fists. He burst into laughter and Daphne smirked beside him. "And what do you think the cops will do? Let me tell you, nothing. They won't do anything. You know why? Because, hey, are you filming me, you bastard?" He had just noticed my cell phone. He grabbed it and attempted to stop the recording, but it was password locked. He threw it on the ceramic floor. Naturally, the ceramic won in the fight. "Listen, you smart person. Your wife will spend this weekend with me, whether you like it or not. She'll be with me whenever I want, and your opinion doesn't matter. Do you understand? If you try to interfere, you'll face consequences. Your life will be a nightmare compared to what's coming. So, stay quiet this weekend and don't cause any problems. If I hear about you upsetting Daphne, threatening divorce, or doing anything foolish like contacting my wife, everyone will find out about your suspicious money activities or the illegal stuff with children on your computer." I pretended not to know. It's highly improbable that such information would become public knowledge. I've never been involved in money laundering or had any connection to illegal materials with children, I mechanically replied. "That can be easily arranged. Uploading material to your computer is a simple task. I possess content that could quickly ruin your reputation." I chose to play even more clueless. Illegal materials with children is illegal. If you upload some to my computer, doesn't that mean you're already in possession of illegal material? I asked innocently. That's the distinction between you and me. Some things that are illegal for you are perfectly acceptable for individuals of power like myself who have the right connections. I highly advise you to stick with your working class antics and not bother people of higher standing. Do you understand? I could scarcely believe what I had just heard. Such dialogue would be excessive even in a comedy movie, yet the individual in my living room was speaking earnestly. "And one more thing, please refrain from seeking revenge against me or Daphne. That includes attempting to get back at her by engaging with someone else intimately. I want to avoid any potential transmission of infections from you to Daphne, and then to me, okay? I won't ask Daphne to deny you sex, at least not for now. Can't you see I'm not being unreasonable? Basically, if you do anything wrong, I'll know about it, okay? Now, let's go, darling." They went back to the front door. Daphne grabbed her overnight bag and left without saying goodbye or even noticing me. He called my wife darling. The whole thing was so strange that I couldn't just feel angry. I felt a mix of anger and shock. In that moment, I silently thanked the burglar who had broken into my house the year before I met Daphne. I was so disturbed that I had a full security system installed, including cameras and microphones that could record everything and save it online. I never revealed to Daphne that the system could be set to recording mode while we were at home, ensuring she remained unaware when I activated it just before she opened the front door for that deplorable individual. Simultaneously, I had initiated the recording on my cell phone, serving more as a decoy. My expectation was that Kramer would notice it and figure out a way to turn it off. This would make him feel less guarded and he might speak more freely, thinking he was no longer being filmed. I hoped this could be a valuable source of information for a potential divorce. The scoundrel provided me with much more than I anticipated. The cell phone now scattered on the floor was in fact my business cell phone. After dealing with a wealthier clientele, I quickly realized that providing them with my main cell phone meant being on call almost 24/7. A dedicated business cell phone allowed me to turn it off at the end of the day, and I could attend to messages the following morning. So at least I wasn't without a means of communication. I picked up my personal phone and called my business lawyer and best friend Harry. 10 years ago, Harry Davenport became the husband of my elder sister, Jennifer. They enjoyed a blissful marriage until tragedy struck. 4 years into their union, Jennifer tragically drowned during a trip to Guadeloupe with her 3 friends. Despite the heartbreaking loss, Harry remained an integral part of our family, earning our love and respect. 3 years after Jennifer's passing, Harry found love again in Christine. They tied the knot after a year of dating, and my parents, Daphne and I, were honored guests. Their wedding. To this day, Harry and Christine are like siblings to me. Recently, I found myself in a dire situation and urgently sought Harry's assistance. After telling Harry about the threats from someone named Kramer, and what happened during my wife's private weekend, Harry quickly offered his help. He told me to stay inside, avoid contacting anyone, and turn off all my devices. He promised that he and Christine would come over with dinner in an hour, which gave me some comfort. Thinking about what had happened, I realized that my wife, Daphne, had been attracted to Kramer's power and charm. I never thought she'd choose him over our love. It was a tough realization that our relationship wasn't as strong as I thought. I met Daphne 5 years ago at a friend's birthday party. We hit it off, and after a week of dating, we got married the next year. During that period, I remained employed by Mr. Duncan, the founder of the small company where I work. Craig Duncan was highly skilled in woodworking and well known in our local area. Despite his expertise in that field, his abilities in accounting and management were lacking. While still in college, he had hired me as a part-time accountant to handle his bookkeeping. A few months into my role, Mr. Duncan secured 3 sizable contracts that demanded more time than he could spare. Although these projects were challenging, his clients insisted he take them on. Consequently, he asked for my assistance in the field. Initially, my tasks involved running errands, procuring supplies, and providing support with the handling of large pieces. My rapid learning and aptitude for the work became evident, and after overcoming the initial learning curve, I could independently handle simpler tasks or be a valuable asset on more complex projects. While I obtained my accounting degree, my passion for hands-on work led me to pursue an apprenticeship. After a few years, I earned certification and became Mr. Duncan's associate. Upon his retirement, my parents supported me financially, enabling me to buy out his share over a 2-year period. Although the lawyers at CBH viewed me as an uneducated shop worker, I was unfazed. My company thrived, focusing on fewer but more lucrative projects. Over the preceding months, I had hired 2 assistants, and my net income and value surpassed those of many lawyers associated with my wife. Despite this success, even my wife was unaware of these details. My contemplation was interrupted by Christine and Harry, who arrived with Chinese takeout and beer. "Are you okay, Kenneth?" Christine inquired, offering a warm hug. "I can't believe Daphne did that to you. This is so unlike her." Harry, giving me a supportive hug, reassured, "Don't worry, buddy, we'll sort things out. Let's have dinner and then I'll take a look at your recording." I shared the details of Daphne's unwelcoming reception when I arrived home earlier that afternoon. Following dinner, I grabbed my laptop and retrieved the files containing recordings from both the camera and microphone. The conversations were really clear. "I can't believe what I just heard," Harry said. "He's quite arrogant, isn't he?" I replied. "No, more like downright foolish," Harry responded. "I mean, this guy is, 42 years old. He should have about 15 years of experience practicing law. He's not new to this. Yet, he's so full of himself that he never realizes that sometimes you just need to stay quiet. Your smart trick of making him think he wasn't being recorded after he destroyed your cell phone worked perfectly. He took the bait and spilled everything we need to know." "Okay, but can I legally use it since it was recorded without his consent?" I inquired. "Absolutely, this is your home. You have the right to record whatever you want here," Harry reassured me. "So I have nothing to worry about. Is that what you're saying?" I questioned. "No, that's not what I'm saying. We need to be extremely cautious. I did some research on my way here. Chris was kind enough to drive and handle the takeout. It turns out our guy Kramer is the son of the founder of their law firm. You were aware of this, right?" Harry explained, and I nodded. "What you might not know is that his father, Marvin Kramer, had quite a reputation. He wasn't a great lawyer, but most of the judges in the area were his former college buddies. Knowing everyone personally made it easy for him to win most of his cases. Unfortunately, his son Derek has followed in his footsteps. That's what makes him dangerous. He has a wide network of friendly judges, and if he files a case, getting a judgment in our favor will be extremely challenging, no matter how illegal his actions are." "Wow, so you're saying that no matter what I do, I'm in trouble?" "Not necessarily. Winning will be challenging, but not impossible. I have connections too, you know. The key is to gather enough evidence to make a strong case against him. I've got a plan." "But you mentioned that the judges will always side with him," I inquired. "Unless we take the case to criminal court, that's what we'll aim for." Our conversation was interrupted by a knock on the front door. A petite brunette was waiting on the porch. "Hello, Mr. Morrison," she asked. "Hi, Laura, come on in," Harry called out behind me. "Kenneth, meet Laura Foster. She's the computer specialist at the private investigator firm we collaborate with." I took the liberty of reaching out to her after our earlier call tonight. We explained the situation to Laura and had her listen to the recorded conversation, especially the part where Kramer threatened to put bad stuff on my computer. Laura paid attention and then explained the plan. "Okay, there are 2 possible things that could happen. Either they come here during the day, probably with your wife's help, use your computer, change the date, and put their stuff on it, making it look like it happened before Kramer visited. If that happens, your camera system will catch everything. Just make sure it's recording before you leave for work in the morning." She took out a small gray box from her bag. "The other option is if they try to mess with your computer remotely. I'll install this thing before your modem to see who tries to get into your router. and watch what they try to put on or take off your computer. Take a few minutes to transfer all your personal or sensitive data and files onto a flash drive. Then delete everything on your computer. The goal is to prevent them from accessing it. I'll assist with this, just to ensure you don't unintentionally leave any hidden data on the computer, Laura explained confidently. It was evident that she was well versed in her field. Harry chimed in. Let's get started. Kenneth, currently your only evidence against him for blackmail is a recording. If you try to pursue legal action with just that, your case might be dismissed quickly. Public opinion doesn't see blackmail as a very serious crime, and the judges he knows may support him. The ideal scenario would be if Kramer actually uploaded illegal material to your computer, and then reported it to the police, claiming he has evidence of you possessing illegal content. In that case, we would have a trail indicating that all of this occurred without your presence at the computer. With the advance warning you received from Kramer, which you recorded, we would have enough evidence to build a strong case against him in criminal court. His judge friends would be less likely to support him if he's involved in criminal activity, especially those related to illegal materials with children, and they would distance themselves from him. I find that disturbing and twisted, I remarked. Yes, but Kramer is just as twisted. One more thing. Can you refrain from using your computer for the next few days? If Kramer proceeds with his plan and reports you, the police inspectors may want to check the computer records to confirm if anyone accessed the illegal files post-upload. If you avoid using it, the records will remain clean, which would be more advantageous for us. Also, ensure that your cell phone doesn't connect to your home Wi-Fi in the coming days to prevent them from using your phone instead of your computer. Laura installed the surveillance module and erased all sensitive information, including my company paperwork, from both my computer and cell phone. The module will forward us copies of all access requests. I'll reach out to Harry and you once we have some information. Best of luck, guys, Laura informed us before leaving. All right, let's get back to more practical matters, Harry suggested. Kenneth, do you want to start the divorce process now? Or do you prefer waiting until Daphne returns to see if things can be resolved? No, I want a divorce as soon as possible. I can't stay married to someone easily influenced and corrupted by self-proclaimed powerful men. No hesitation, I want out. All right then, I'll contact Claudia Milton tomorrow. She's the family law expert at my office. Good, fair, and efficient. I'll ask her to reach out to you ASAP. You'll like her, Harry assured me. We continued discussing matters, and I provided Harry with the access code to my recording system for real-time updates and cloud-stored information. Christine and Harry departed around 23 hours. I took a Zopi clone and fell asleep within half an hour. At 8:30 the next day, Claudia Milton called me after talking with Harry, who explained everything about my situation. She asked me to come to her office by 11. During our meeting, Claudia felt sorry for what I was going through after hearing about Derek Kramer's bad reputation. She told me that since I bought the house before meeting Daphne, and her name wasn't on the deed, the house still belonged to me. Since we didn't have any kids, the divorce process would be simple. Worried about my company, I asked if I might have to sell it and split the money. Claudia called Harry to address my worries, and he quickly assured us, don't worry, the marriage contract clearly says that your company is yours alone, and she has no right to it. They might try, but I checked, and legally, they can't. The meeting with Claudia ended at 12:30, and I took care of financial matters as she instructed. She took charge of the situation, assuring me that everything was under control and Daphne would be served the divorce papers at her office on Monday. Later, I replaced my damaged cell phone and spent the rest of the weekend working on the yard and catching up on my favorite TV series. Despite my lingering anger towards Daphne, I couldn't fully grasp the reality of the situation. While I anticipated grieving for the marriage eventually, at that moment, my emotions were still too intense. The prospect of Daphne returning home on Sunday loomed, and I debated whether to sleep in the guest room or relegate her to it. Ultimately, I decided that it was my house, and she had walked out on me. Refusing to share my bed with her, I moved all her belongings into the guest room. Subsequently, I purchased a new lockable doorknob and installed it on my bedroom door, keeping the key in my pocket. I activated the surveillance system to record. I observed Daphne engaging in a prolonged French kiss with her boss before exiting the car and waving as he drove away. I was seated in the living room seemingly engrossed in a book when she entered. "Hi honey, how was your weekend?" she inquired, appearing anxious. Despite her attempt to conceal it, I could discern that she wasn't as composed as she projected. I refrained from acknowledging her, maintaining my focus on my book. "Fine, continue with your sulking. Derek was spot on when he mentioned you would act this way, suggesting you lack the intelligence to understand my needs or the maturity to accept your shortcomings. She ascended the stairs. As she left, I began counting. 1, 2, 3. Kenneth Morrison, what's going on? Did you put a lock on our bedroom? On my bedroom, I responded calmly. All your belongings are in the guest bedroom. You'll be staying there until you find an apartment. What the hell? Wait until I tell Derek about this. This was not part of the agreement. Agreement? What agreement? I haven't agreed to any of your partner's nonsense. Either you stay in the guest room or leave. Perhaps Kramer's wife can accommodate you in her marital bed. She glared at me, not uttering a word, stormed into the guest room, slammed the door. I followed her upstairs, yelling through the door. Speaking of agreements, what was in it for me, by the way? No response. I returned upstairs. After 15 minutes, my phone began buzzing with text messages from an unfamiliar number. What's this I hear, cuck? You won't let Daphne into her own room. I thought I explained things clearly to you. Even someone like you should comprehend. For tonight, I'll overlook your childish crisis. Tomorrow, you'll prepare Daphne's favorite dinner and apologize for your behavior. If you behave the rest of the week, I'll permit her to be intimate with you next weekend. Fail to comply, and you'll discover my threats are genuine. Follow my instructions, no questions, clear. I couldn't believe what I was reading. This person bordered on being heartless, delusional, and foolish. I chose not to respond, but took a screenshot of the conversation and sent it to Harry. Harry responded 3 minutes later saying, "Incredible, this guy thinks he's top-notch, but he's just a first-rate idiot. Keep the conversation intact and don't bother replying to him." Kramer continued to send a couple more acknowledgement requests, to which I remained silent. Eventually, he stopped reaching out. I didn't encounter Daphne again that evening. I went to bed. I locked the door and kept the recording system on. I messaged one of my assistants, telling him I'd be late the next day. The morning after Daphne left, I got up and prepared for the day. While having breakfast, I downloaded the recordings from the previous night. Daphne hadn't left the guest room until that morning. She showered in the guest bathroom and left without eating breakfast. Surprisingly, she didn't try anything with my computer like I thought she might. Then, I got a text from Claudia Milton confirming that the divorce papers would be served at 10:15 that morning. I also informed Harry about it. Have as good a day as possible, considering everything. Before heading to the shop, I ensured my home system was still recording and set to send an alert to my phone if activated. I had an 11Z meeting with the architect to discuss the final modifications for my current client. I kept myself occupied with small tasks until the meeting. I anticipated a call from Daphne shortly after being served, but it never came. At 10:45, I messaged Harry, expressing my surprise at Daphne's lack of contact. This means she's talked to Kramer about the divorce papers. They might already be scheming. I'll call Laura. Stay tuned, Harry replied. The meeting went smoothly, surprisingly allowing me to stay focused. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing maintenance on my tools and tidying up the shop. At 15:12, I received an alert on my cell phone. I texted Harry that the show was in motion. He responded with a thumbs up. I accessed my system and observed the live events unfolding in my house. Daphne had entered accompanied by an unfamiliar man. They proceeded to our home office where they activated my computer. The two of them maintained minimal conversation. The man spent a few minutes deciphering my password, followed by inserting a flash drive into my computer and engaging in suspicious activities for around 10 minutes. Fortunately, I managed to capture clear images of his face. Meanwhile, Daphne went to the guest room and packed her belongings in garbage bags, as her suitcases were apparently in the master bedroom closet. Once the man completed his tasks, he shut down the computer and informed Daphne of his departure. She finished packing and left the premises at 15:56. Harry contacted me shortly after the recording ceased. "All right, Kenneth, head home and act normally. I suspect they will involve the police tonight or tomorrow, so be prepared for an inspector's visit. Obtaining a search warrant takes a few hours, so anticipate their arrival tomorrow." Could I get arrested? I asked Harry about the possibility of an arrest. He said it's possible. If it happens, he advised me to stay quiet and not answer any questions. He told me he had contacted Stephen Lindsay, a trustworthy criminal defense lawyer, and shared all the important details, including the recordings. According to Harry, Lindsay assured him that this would be an easy case to handle. I gave Harry the code to control my alarm system recording in case of an arrest. After discussing a few more things, we ended our conversation. I felt extremely anxious as I drove home. The evening passed without any police visits, calls from Daphne, or unpleasant messages from asshole Kramer. I made myself a sandwich and ate while watching TV. Although tempted to inform my parents about the situation, I decided to wait until the storm had passed. Explaining computer system tampering, and cloud-stored videos to my mother seemed futile and likely to cause unnecessary worry. The following day, while I was at the store, I received another notification indicating that there was an intruder in my house. Following the same procedure as the previous incident, I immediately texted Harry and accessed my security system. The police had entered my residence and were attempting to deactivate the alarm. It seemed they had successfully shut down the system as communication was lost. Harry informed me that he had witnessed the events and forwarded the images to Stephen Lindsay. About an hour after the police came to my house, 2 officers showed up at my shop and arrested me. They put handcuffs on me and took me away in a police car. They quickly told me about my rights and started asking questions, but I didn't answer any of them. When we got to the police station, they took away my phone and wallet and put me in a cell with 5 other people. We didn't talk much, everyone just stared at the floor. After about 3 hours, a guard came and took me to a room where I was supposed to meet my lawyer. "What's going on?" I asked the guard, but they didn't say anything and left me alone in the room. The door opened again 10 minutes later, revealing Derek Kramer with a triumphant grin as wide as the Golden Gate Bridge. He sat across from me without uttering a word. I maintained eye contact, offering no response. Once satisfied with establishing his dominance and making it clear that he considered himself victorious in this battle, he gave me a triumphant look and began speaking. "Now, do you understand the gravity of the situation?" I remained silent. "I asked you a question, Morrison. Answer me, you insignificant bug." Once again, I refrained from responding. "It will be your testimony against mine, Morrison." A carpenter's word versus one of the most prominent lawyers in the city. "Can you guess the outcome?" he inquired, his perpetual smirk in place. He rose from his seat. "All right. It appears that you need some time to think over what I've shared with you. Let's reconvene tomorrow morning for further discussion. Maybe spending a night in this communal cell with your friends will help you gain some clarity," he stated before exiting the room. I was escorted back to the cell where there were now only 4 other individuals. Later that afternoon, another person came to see me. I was brought back to the same meeting room where a tall blonde man awaited me with a stern expression. "Don't mess with me" demeanor. He stood up as I entered. "Good afternoon, Kenneth. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Stephen Lindsay. Feel free to call me Stephen. Harry contacted me earlier today, expressing difficulty reaching you. Given the circumstances, we suspected you might have been arrested and brought here." I proceeded to recount all the events of the afternoon, including the unsettling visit from Derek Kramer. Stephen's jaw visibly dropped, though he remained silent. "All right, you'll be appearing before a judge tomorrow morning. Expect a substantial bail, but don't worry, Harry will handle it. I know it's going to be a tough night, but stay strong. Both Harry and I are here to support you. In the meantime, continue refusing to answer their questions. I've officially taken on your case, and I'll ensure Kramer doesn't bother you again." The next day, I faced the judge on charges of possessing illegal materials with children, maintaining my plea of not guilty. The bail was set at 25 Kelvin, and I was released later that afternoon. I couldn't leave the city or talk to my soon-to-be ex-wife, Derek Kramer, or anyone from their office. But I could still work in my shop. They gave back my phone and wallet, and Stephen took me out for lunch later. I didn't say much at the police station yesterday because I was worried about privacy. But after making some calls and looking into things, I found out some interesting stuff about Derek Kramer. Let me tell you about it. First, it takes a while to get a search warrant, and they can't arrest you until after they find something. In your case, they arrested you before finishing the search. Second, even though you couldn't contact me or Harry, Derek Kramer was allowed to see you. This seems like a setup, which is definitely against the law. But Harry mentioned that Kramer has influence over many judges, I pointed out. "Not all of them," he replied with a wink. "You can't build so many friendships without inevitably making some enemies. I have no idea what I'll find at home. I hope my wife and her conniving partner didn't take everything. Don't worry about that. Harry went to your place right after the police left, rearmed the system and set it to record again. No one showed up. I returned to the shop to retrieve my car, and then headed home for a well-deserved and necessary shower. The architect had left a message, confirming the updated plan had received client approval. This was a positive development, as it meant I could return to work the next day and divert my mind. Upon reaching home, I discovered a chaotic scene. Every inch had been searched. Besides the manipulated computer, I knew they wouldn't find anything incriminating. As I tidied up, I couldn't help but shed tears for the first time. Just a week ago, I was a content man in what I believed was a solid marriage. Now, I was a suspect in a crime, facing divorce, and manipulated by my wife's boss. What had I done to deserve this? At least there were no reporters bothering me. They were likely preoccupied with the newly uncovered multi-billion unexplained hole in public finances to care about someone like Kenneth. Towards the conclusion of the subsequent week, Stephen finally reached out to me. With a significant revelation, all charges against me had been dropped. It appeared that the assigned inspector, a formidable individual, particularly sensitive to issues of blackmail, was not one to be trifled with. Apparently unswayed by Kramer's maneuver, the inspector promptly ensured the filing of charges against Derek Kramer for blackmail, evidence fabrication, and possession of illegal materials with children. Daphne, on the other hand, would face accusations of conspiracy related to these crimes. Shortly after my conversation with Stephen, Harry called me, inviting me to dinner that evening. While en route to Harry's house, Claudia Milton, my family law attorney, contacted me. Kenneth, Daphne's lawyer, called me this afternoon and conveyed her readiness to sign the divorce papers without alterations. With one condition. She insists on having a 1-hour private meeting with you, and she suggested it could happen at my office. Even though seeing Daphne was the last thing I wanted, I thought the meeting might help speed up the divorce process, so I agreed to it. The evening I spent with Harry and Christine was a nice break, the first relaxing one I've had in 2 weeks. Christine made a delicious meal of coconut shrimp and rice, which helped me feel calm when I got home. The meeting with Daphne was set for the following Wednesday, and despite being the victim in this situation, I couldn't help feeling nervous. When I arrived, Claudia directed me to her office and gave me some advice. Kenneth, I'm unsure about her intentions, but I must caution you. There are pending criminal accusations against her. Do not provide any ammunition. Avoid saying anything that could be used against you in court. We can't search her for recording devices, so be mindful that she may be recording you. Okay, thanks for the warning, I replied. I was ushered into a small private meeting room where Daphne was already seated. I anticipated encountering the same spiteful and arrogant Daphne I had known in the preceding weeks. However, the Daphne before me appeared to be a shattered individual. Despite feeling a surge of compassion, the vivid recollection of her questionable interaction with Kramer before their weekend getaway swiftly dispelled any positive sentiments I might have harbored. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Kenneth. What could you possibly have to say to me, Daphne, after all you've done? Her tears began to flow. Kenneth, I'm so ashamed of my actions towards you. You're an amazing husband who didn't deserve any of that. I was completely ensnared by Derek Kramer's influence. When I learned that the charges against you were dropped and he and I might face accusations, it jolted me out of that spell. I can barely face myself in the mirror, and all for the most pitiful encounter. For the next 30 minutes, she continued to self-reflect, offering an impromptu analysis of her own behavior. She didn't probe me for information or ask any questions. I get it, Kenneth. Our relationship is over. If I were you, I'd also want a divorce. I don't blame you for wanting to end things. I've quit my job, and I told Derek Kramer I never want to talk to him again. I went back to my parents' house and told them everything. They're really mad at me. Let's just say it's not very friendly or welcoming at home right now. I looked at her quietly. Honestly, I didn't have anything clever to say about all of this. She had created her own situation, and now she had to face the consequences. The upcoming months, and perhaps even years, will be challenging for me, Kenneth. I'm uncertain about what life has in store for me. My only hope is that eventually, after everything settles, we might have the chance to be friends. That's a distant prospect, Daphne. Very distant. We'll see when we get there. Best of luck. I stood up and exited the room. A part of me still held affection for her, but a reconciliation was out of the question. Despite my initial desire for revenge, circumstances had already turned her into a miserable person. She had learned a lesson, and there was no need for further retribution. Daphne secured a plea bargain by fully cooperating with authorities against Derek Kramer, leading her to relocate to another city. I lost touch with her thereafter. When accusations against Kramer became public, 2 other men came forward, lodging a complaint against him for blackmail. Kramer received a 12-year jail sentence. As the police possessed recordings of all my interactions with him, my testimony wasn't required. After Kramer's conviction, I initiated a civil case against him and securing a $2 million settlement with a significant portion going to Harry. Despite feigning outrage, I was pleased to reward Harry for his invaluable assistance. My business is doing really well, and I'm almost done buying another company that makes special doors, which will make my business even better. I have 6 employees who feel like family, and I'm happy with how things are going. Harry and Christine invited me to a barbecue a few days after my divorce was finished. I met Christine's sister, Kathy, there, and we really hit it off. We've been dating for a few weeks now, and we'll see where it goes. A few weeks after I settled the lawsuit against CBH and Kramer, I went to visit Kramer in jail. I made sure the guard stayed with us during our talk. When Kramer saw me, he tried to leave, but the guard made him stay. Ignoring his insults, I casually asked, "Starting trouble? Huh. Interesting. Heard your wife Jessica filed for divorce. Perhaps I should ask her out for dinner and offer her a memorable night." Enraged, Kramer responded, "You bastard. If you do the cutting him off," I grinned. "Don't waste your pathetic spit, asshole. I've already done that. The hummingbird tattoo on her upper left thigh is quite lovely, isn't it, cuck?" He turned crimson, resembling a beet. Once again, he was on the verge of issuing threats. However, in the final moment, he grasped that such an approach wouldn't further his cause. "Regardless, I'm not here today to discuss Jessica. I just wanted to inform you that you're a fool who needs occasional reminders of his own foolishness. Consider this: menacing a man in his own home and outlining in advance the consequences if he doesn't comply with your absurd demands isn't exactly a display of intelligence, is it? Even a carpenter would recognize that. Let's say on this occasion, you're the one left in the dust." I burst into laughter while he simmered with anger. "Oh, and weren't you the one who asserted that possessing certain materials was illegal for a simple man like me, but perfectly acceptable for a powerful figure like yourself? You really impress me with your power. It's quite something. Maybe it's the jumpsuit. It looks great on you." Kramer was so angry that he seemed like he might lose it. "Before I go, I have something that both Jessica and Daphne thought you might want to see someday," I said, handing him a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it and looked at it for a moment. "What is this?" he asked. He inquired. "Case in point," I chuckled. "This is a depiction of female genitalia, commonly referred to as a pussy." I pointed to a specific spot on the drawing. "They wanted you to know that the arousal point is here." Second story, guilt versus lust. Been seeing my best friend's husband. I'm a bad person. Using this as somewhat of a confession due to my guilt. Using alias names for obvious reasons. So some done context. My best friend for over 20 years is awesome. We have been through so much over the years, good and bad. Even shared some naughty nights before we meet our hubbies, we were that close. She was my maid of honor and vice versa. Anyways, so she'd been married to her hubby for about 8 years. They seem on the surface of it a great couple, much like me and my husband. So one day I got a message from Pete asking if I wanted to catch up for a drink. I was curious and skeptical, but he said he really needed to talk to me about Sarah, so naturally I meet him. When we met at the bar, we talked about random things, and he started telling me about how his sex life is boring and he's worried that his partner isn't attracted to him anymore, and so on. Now, Sarah has told me everything, and I know for sure that this isn't true. I also agree that he's actually quite good looking and in great shape because he works a physical job. I'm not sure why their sex life is dull, but I tried to support him by complimenting him and reassuring him, and so on. After this perfectly innocent meet, we continued to exchange text messages, and I even started to open up about my marriage and things troubling me in my relationship. This went on for about a month or so, and the messages started to take a turn. Reassuring each other started to turn to flirting with each other. Innocent pictures of the sunset turned into half-naked post-gym selfies, etc. We were trying to convince each other it was wrong and we shouldn't be talking the way we were talking, but neither of us wanted to stop. Then, one day after my work drinks and a Friday night, he convinced me to meet him at a hotel lobby bar in the city, short walk from my work. I reluctantly agreed, knowing it was a bad idea. Once I got there, we had a few drinks when he told me he had gotten a room for the night, and would I like to see it. The most of me was saying no, but next thing you know, I'm in the room having sex with him. My BFF told he was good in bed, and now I was finding out for myself. I left saying this was wrong and it won't happen again. I meant that, however, I say that every time to him after. This has been going on for about 3 months now, and both our respective partners have no idea. Now I truly love my husband. He's an amazing guy, great provider, great father to our kids, which is why I feel so guilty. This thing with Pete is nothing but pure lust. He's handsome, sweet yet dominant, and great in bed. He offers something my hubby can't, and I can't stop myself. What will win, my guilt or lust? Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional rollercoaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. Upon entering my new school, I sensed the imminent shift in my surroundings. Having been born and bred in Philly, relocating an hour away from the bustling city was bound to require some adaptation. And by adaptation, I mean embracing the change with open arms. At the behest of my father and the persistence of my mother, I diligently kept myself out of trouble, steering clear of any unnecessary entanglements. The demographic makeup of the area was quite diverse. A mix of blacks, Hispanics, Italians, Jews, and predominantly hard-nosed Dutch descendants. They weren't of the Amish or Mennonite stock, but rather staunch German Lutherans who held sway over the locality. Despite the eclectic blend, I found it relatively easy to blend in, although I couldn't help but long for the camaraderie of my Philly friends. Post-graduation, I opted to stay put, primarily to remain close to my family. But I still visited my old neighborhood often to stay close to my childhood friends. I started working by driving a truck that delivered fuel oil. As time went on, I moved to a job indoors where I managed orders and schedules. I realized I was good at this job and could see myself owning a similar business someday soon. Making friends with people of the opposite sex was easy for me, and my social life was better than I expected. When I tied the knot, my mother harbored a slight disappointment that my spouse, Elena, wasn't of Italian descent. However, she made every effort to ensure that Elena was warmly embraced without any reservations. After the arrival of our 2 children, Elena advocated for me to undergo a vasectomy. I had no objections to the idea, but as the children started school, Elena expressed her desire to re-enter the workforce. My father held the belief that it wasn't ideal for a wife and mother to pursue a career outside the home. While I couldn't entirely grasp the reasoning behind his stance at the time, upon reflection, it seemed to align with certain traditional values. It wasn't that I objected to Elena's decision to work, but rather I felt uncomfortable with the idea of her socializing extensively with people from her past, some of whom I didn't particularly care for. During her school days, Elena was deeply involved in various extracurricular activities, which she thoroughly enjoyed. Conversely, I steered clear of such engagements and the individuals associated with them, perceiving them as elitist cliques focused on mutual admiration. Although both Elena and I had experienced previous relationships, we never broached the topic, simply falling into a tacit understanding not to delve into our respective pasts. After a decade of marriage, cracks began to surface in our relationship. Elena had been diligently working in the claims department of a local national insurance company. My concerns heightened when she started clocking in overtime and sacrificing weekends for work. It was 6 months later when I finally reached my breaking point. It happened when the seminar was mentioned. It's only 3 days. I've already arranged for your mom to take care of the kids while I'm away. You'll be home in the evenings. You can manage to cook for yourself, Elena argued, seeming unaware of my increasing discomfort. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to ask. Who else is going to the seminar? I asked, trying to stay calm. Her mood brightened a bit as she replied, 6 girls from the department, Vivian Wright from personnel, and Derek. A smile crept onto my face upon hearing his name. It was astounding that she hadn't realized I was aware of her clandestine lunches and late-night work sessions with her immediate superior, Dirk Torres. Dirk and Elena share a history, having grown up together. He was the epitome of the overachiever in school, involved in every club and activity except sports. Do you think I'm some kind of fool, Elena? I snapped, my frustration palpable. Confusion flickered across her face. I don't understand. What are you talking about? She replied innocently. I've known about you and Derek for 6 months now. If you think I'm going to let you go away with him for 3 days, you're out of your mind. I retorted, my tone tinged with bitterness. Marco, you're misunderstanding. Derek is my boss. There's nothing going on between us. I would never cheat on you. You know that. She protested, her eyes pleading for understanding. I glanced down at the empty Budweiser can in my hand, my grip tightening involuntarily. Slowly, I got up from my chair and walked to the kitchen. With a clenched fist, I crushed the thin aluminum and threw it towards the trash can, missing by a few inches. The sound of the nuke and hissing as I opened the top filled the tense silence when I returned to my seat. You're a good mother to our children, Elena. That's the only reason you're still here, I said. I've talked to my mom about all of this. She advised me to stay strong and hope that you come to your senses for the sake of the kids. If I were to leave you, the courts would give you custody. I can't let that happen, I explained, feeling the weight of the situation in the air. Did you tell your mother I was cheating on you? Elena's voice wavered, disbelief etched across her features. No, a lady from church spilled the beans. I simply didn't deny it when she confronted me. I admitted coolly. Her eyes widened in shock. You can't be serious. I don't believe you. Why are you saying all this? She implored, desperation lacing her tone. Taking a hefty swig of beer, I couldn't help but smirk. Derek resides at 321 David Drive, just 3 blocks from your office. You and your boss frequent his place, usually 3 times a week, lingering for nearly 3 hours each visit. Care to enlighten me on what exactly goes on there for 3 hours? And while we're at it, care to explain the overtime you've been clocking at the office? Did you know your office clean lady also attends church with my mother? Tears welled up in her eyes, her lower lip trembling as she struggled to find words. As long as you refrain from publicly humiliating me or my family, I'll refrain from taking drastic measures. But if that changes, all bets are off. You can stay or you can leave. But you'll never take my boys from me, I declared firmly. With a mix of fury and anguish, Alina rose abruptly from her seat. Damn you, Marco. I hate you, she spat, before storming out of the room, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was the first time she had ever cursed at me, and the first time she had said derogatory things about my background. The anger in her finally showed. We had 2 boys, Harry and Jack, who shared a room with bunk beds. The 3rd bedroom was used for storage. That's where I ended up sleeping from then on. It was a rented house. Despite having saved over $60,000 for a down payment on our dream home, my dreams had turned into a nightmare. We never talked about the seminar incident again. Alina ceased working overtime and started bringing her lunch to work. The atmosphere at home wasn't just chilly. It was icy and frigid. My mom hadn't received any new intel from her church acquaintances. Things appeared to be returning to normal, but I couldn't shake off the discomfort. There was a noticeable absence of intimacy, and I knew I couldn't endure that situation for much longer. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed to accompany Alina to her company Christmas party. I didn't want to leave her to attend alone, and I figured I could pass the evening quietly by simply staying out of the way. It seemed like a good plan at the time, but it was riddled with flaws. The company had rented out a spacious hall equipped with a dance floor, a lavish buffet table, and a couple of open bars. I could nurse 3 beers throughout the entire evening without feeling any adverse effects. When we arrived, the only available tables were situated near the company's top brass, conspicuously vacant as it seemed employees were deliberately avoiding those seats. Things appeared to be going smoothly for the first hour. I observed Derek across the room, casually mingling with his buddies. While several of Alina's colleagues invited her to dance, Derek remained conspicuously absent. I was more than happy to let her enjoy herself on the dance floor, as dancing wasn't my cup of tea. As I sipped on my 3rd beer, I couldn't help but notice subtle exchanges of glances between Alina and Derek from across the room. It was mainly comprised of nods and subtle head tilts, but it was evident that something was brewing between them. I did my best to feign disinterest and boredom while discreetly keeping a watchful eye on their interactions. As my wife excused herself to visit the restroom, I quickly scanned the room and realized Derek was nowhere to be seen. It was puzzling. After our argument at home, it seemed silly for her to try meeting him while we were both in the same building. She could have easily met him at work without any risk of getting caught. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wanted to embarrass me by showing off her connection with Derek in front of everyone. By talking to him at a company event, she would be publicly calling me a fool for being cheated on. As Alana walked away towards the restrooms, Derek's friends, with smug grins, stood together by one of the bars. Before going to the restroom myself, I went to the main table. I gave a fake apology for any trouble, just to get their attention. The group across the room, who had been smiling before, now looked unsure of how to help Derek in this unexpected situation. Entering the empty ladies' room first, I then ventured into the men's room. What I witnessed next unfolded in a blur of shock and anger. There they were, locked in an embrace. His back was to me, his hand creeping up her skirt, and to my dismay, there was no resistance from her. I seized Derek by the collar and forcefully shoved him against the wall, ignoring my wife's frantic cries echoing in the background. With a swift motion, I brought him to the ground. The once lively hall felt eerily silent as I dragged Derek to the center of the floor by his tie. The orchestra had halted their music, and all eyes were fixed on the unfolding scene. Surveying the room, I noted the absence of any offers of assistance for Derek. I apologize for disrupting your festivities. I'll be taking my leave now, but feel free to entertain yourselves with my unfaithful wife. I declared, the bitterness in my tone palpable. As Derek struggled to rise to his hands and knees, Alina stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. It was unclear whether her distress was directed at what I had done to her lover or the humiliating declaration I had made to her colleagues. Frankly, it didn't concern me. Observing Derek's position directly beneath the mistletoe, a sudden impulse overtook me. Before departing, I delivered a sharp kick, ensuring he wouldn't forget the encounter anytime soon. He crumpled to the ground in agony, yet not a single word was uttered by the onlookers. I phoned my mom from the car, requesting her to swing by the house to pick up the boys. feeling like I needed to get away for a few days. I didn't want to leave the kids with their mom. I didn't think she'd be able to take care of them properly. I drove around without a clear plan in mind, just trying to escape. Luckily, my boss agreed to give me a week off. When I got home, my parents were already there. After paying the babysitter, I helped get the boys ready for their grandma's house. My bag was packed in a hurry, mostly with socks and underwear, and a few shirts and pants just in case. Before leaving, I grabbed the cash box from the basement. I kept $62,000 at home because the interest rates at banks were low. Some might think it was silly, but it was something I learned from my mom, who used to keep money hidden around the kitchen. As I was turning off the lights, a taxi pulled up, depositing Alina at the doorstep. She entered wordlessly, sinking onto the couch without a sound. Her expression was more one of concern than anger, more troubled and fearful. I made it clear, didn't I? Just one rule. Don't embarrass me or my family in public. But you couldn't resist, could you? I uttered calmly, watching as tears welled in her eyes before turning and walking out the door. It was a little after 9 when I merged onto the Schuylkill Expressway. Well, that party didn't last long for me, at least. I decided to spend a few days in Atlantic City before heading home, but first, I needed to catch up with my old friend, Luca. Luca ran a sandwich shop in our old neighborhood. It wasn't one of those flashy places you see in Philly travel guides. Rather, it served as a local convenience for the nearby residents. His main source of income came from other ventures that most of us either overlooked or were involved in ourselves. He lived on the second floor and operated out of the back room. Meeting Luca felt like a trip down memory lane. After explaining my predicament, he agreed to lend a hand. Marco, it's going to cost you $20. Can you handle that, or do you need me to spot you? Luca inquired. I've got it up front. No problem, I replied confidently. Do you want it messy or quiet? Luca asked. Transparent. No fuss, no muss, nothing, I asserted. You're leaving for a few days. Do you have anything set up? Luca inquired further. No plans. I was thinking of heading to Atlantic City, I responded. How about 6 days and 7 nights at the Taj? Luca suggested. What are you talking about, Luca? I questioned. I've got some comps coming in. I think it would work out pretty well for you, Luca explained. Sounds good to me. I agreed. Are you going alone, Marco? Luca probed. Yeah, this was all sort of spur of the moment. I didn't have time to invite anyone, I admitted. You shouldn't be alone. You need somebody to help verify that you were there. Hold on a minute, Luca said before picking up the phone and dialing a familiar number. Bella, it's Luca. Make yourself pretty and get your ass down here, Luca instructed over the phone, then chuckled before continuing. No, nothing like that. You're going on vacation. Marco, do you remember Bella, my brother Michael's oldest? Luca asked me. Yeah, chubby little thing with dark brown eyes. I remember she was always laughing. How old is she now? I recalled. Luca smiled at my recollection of his niece. She's 23 now, Marco, and she ain't chubby anymore. Suddenly, it dawned on me that Bella would be joining me for the trip to the shore. The thought made me slightly uneasy, considering she was Luca's niece, but then again, he was the one orchestrating the whole thing. Marco, do you have a credit card? Luca inquired. I have 2 of them. I was planning to cancel them Monday morning, I replied. Don't do that. I want you to use those credit cards as much as possible. Meals out, room service, maybe even some casino cash advances, but don't go overboard. You need to use your credit card to show you were there. Spread out the activity over time so it doesn't seem like you came back home secretly. It might cost you a bit, but it's worth it, Luca advised. Luca clearly knew what he was talking about. It all made sense. As I thought about his advice, Bella walked into the room. Marco, I haven't seen you since you moved up to the countryside. You look great, Bella exclaimed. Now I understood why Luca was smiling. Bella was stunningly beautiful. Her dark eyes were mesmerizing, and any remnants of baby fat she once had seemed to have relocated to her chest. In my flustered state, I clumsily knocked over my chair as I jumped to my feet. Marco needs someone to keep him company in Atlantic City for a few days. Are you up for it? Luca inquired. Her demeanor shifted slightly at his words. Aren't you still married? She questioned, turning her attention to me. Before I could respond, Luca intervened. The marriage is over, Bella. Marco needs a companion right now. I know you always liked him, so I thought of you first, Luca explained. Luca, I can't be a part of breaking up someone's family. It's not right for you to ask me to do this. Can't you just get one of the girls to accompany him? I protested. I'm not asking you to sleep with him. Just keep him company and help him forget his troubles, Luca reasoned. Bella's expression shifted as if she had just pieced something together. She was not only stunning, but also quick-witted. I'm sorry, she said, glancing between Luca and me with a small smile. I'd be happy to go with you, Marco, but you have to promise to buy me some saltwater taffy. We all share the smile. I'll need about an hour to get ready. Luca, make sure he doesn't drink anything. I don't want to drive down there with a drunk, Bella instructed as she left to gather her things, perhaps giving me a playful wink. While Bella was away, Luca and I reviewed our conversation. He graciously accepted my $20,000 and assured me of his full commitment. The drive to Atlantic City was uneventful, except for the detailed rundown I provided Bella about the issues with Elena. Her only response was, "Oh, the poor kids." Bella frowned upon seeing the double beds in our room, but fortunately, she didn't notice my suppressed chuckle. I had a strong feeling that we'd only be using one of them before the week was over. All good things come in time. We dabbled in a bit of gambling, but kept it restrained. I was wise enough to understand that in the grand scheme, the odds were stacked against me. Bella was content with the quarter slots, while I simply sought a diversion. More often than not, we found ourselves relishing meals and strolling along the boardwalk, and naturally we caught every show in town. The first night, I maintained my gentlemanly demeanor, but by noon on the second day, Bella and I were igniting sparks between the sheets. My mom was right. I should have married an Italian girl, I thought. Being with Bella felt natural, and I didn't feel like I was betraying anyone. As we were getting ready for dinner on the fourth day, we got unexpected visitors. Two men, not wearing suits but sports jackets, were at our door. I'm Louis Coleman, and this is my partner, Oscar Jenkins. We're from the Berks County Special Crimes Task Force. Can we talk to you, Marco Romano? Louis introduced them. Bella came out of the bathroom in her underwear, glanced at the men, then grabbed her bathrobe from the bed. Though she was a bit embarrassed, she understood the seriousness of the situation. Can you give me an idea of what we'll be discussing? I inquired. We'd like to discuss your connection with directors, Louis replied. I didn't have a relationship with directors. My wife did, I clarified. For some reason, they appeared slightly uneasy. Coleman took the lead in conversation while Oscar seemed preoccupied with staring at Bella. We understand, Mr. Romano. We're aware of the altercation you had with him last Friday at the Continental Insurance Christmas party, Coleman explained. Is he pressing charges? I inquired. No, he's gone missing, and we were hoping you could assist us in locating him, Coleman replied. Gentlemen, before we proceed, I'd like to have someone from the Atlantic City Police Department present, and I don't mean just any officer. If you can arrange that, on the lawyer, my lawyer from Reading, I asserted. There was no immediate response from my visitors. Bella, get dressed. We're heading out for supper. Apologies, gentlemen, but we have reservations at 6 o'clock. The steaks at the safari are outstanding. I may be available to speak with you this Friday if needed, I offered. They seemed taken aback by my response. Why do you suspect something happened to this guy? Maybe he simply left town for a while, I suggested. He was picked up by a cab leaving Community General Hospital on Sunday morning. And no one has seen him since, Coleman revealed. Bella had finished dressing, and I was slipping on my jacket. Well, I've been here since Friday night, and you can verify that with the hotel staff. Now, if you'll excuse me, we're off for a couple of steaks. I won't answer any more questions until Friday, I said firmly. Okay, we'll see you then, Coleman replied. I just nodded and led them to the door. We rode down the elevator together, but we didn't say anything else. When we got to the lobby, they went to hotel security, and Bella and I went to the safari. Harry and Jack were really happy to see me when I got home, and they were even happier when they saw the saltwater taffy I brought back. But Alina seemed distant and cold. It was clear she didn't know what had happened that day. After talking to the police, I spent the rest of the afternoon with the boys and planned to talk to Alina later. Later that evening, the boys were settled in front of the TV for the evening, so I took a seat at the kitchen table, patiently waiting for Lana to finish cleaning up. She seemed to be taking longer than usual, but I remained seated, unmoved. Finally, she turned towards me and sat down, resting her elbows on the formica top. What did you do with Tarek? Her tone wasn't accusatory or angry. Rather, she seemed genuinely. Her gaze shifted between me and the room as she awaited my response. I was in Atlantic City all week. I haven't seen Direct since the party, I replied. You heard him, she stated matter-of-factly. I hope so, I responded bluntly. He was in the hospital for 2 days. You broke his jaw and his nose, she informed me. He deserved it, I retorted. She seemed to have run out of questions. What were you doing with him in the men's room? I pressed after a moment of silence. There was no response from Alina. She sat, wringing her hands and avoiding eye contact, fixated on the tabletop. Why did he have his hand up your skirt? I questioned, still met with silence. Why aren't you at work and why are the kids home on a school day? I queried further. I had to quit work. There was no way I could go back there again. I took the boys out of school because your mother said you might be home today, Alina confessed. It was time to address the issues head on. I made it clear, Alina, there was only one rule. Don't do anything that would humiliate me or my family. A straightforward rule. Why did you feel the need to break it? Both of you just seemed determined to rub it in. Why? I demanded, my frustration mounting with each word. Alina appeared increasingly nervous as we sat there. I slammed my fist onto the tabletop forcefully. I asked you why. Damn it, answer me, I insisted. I don't know why. It just happened. You were sitting there like a lost puppy and we thought we could take advantage of the situation. We had no idea you would react like that. You went berserk. I was terrified, she confessed, her voice trembling with emotion. At least she was showing some emotion. But her explanation made no sense. I refused to dwell on it. It was foolish of them to choose that moment and that place to humiliate me. They had weeks to plan the rendezvous before the party, and I would have been none the wiser. No, their plan was clear, and Alina's excuses wouldn't change that. Alina, you have 3 options. You can stay here and be a mother to our children. You can choose to get a divorce and leave without having custody of the kids, or you can disappear from our lives completely. But if you stay, we won't be married anymore, and I won't tolerate any more affairs with Derek or anyone else, I said firmly. When I mentioned Derek's name, Alina started crying. Before she could decide, she ran out of the room, crying a lot. We'd have to talk more another day. I made some changes. I got a small apartment a few blocks away from the house, close enough for the boys to visit whenever they wished. Bella moved in with me. The police interviewed me a few more times before ceasing their inquiries. Directors had been last seen picked up by a taxi outside the hospital, but his whereabouts remained unknown. Despite his family offering a reward for any information, no leads were forthcoming. Every evening, I joined Alina and the boys for supper, and I made sure to spend quality time with my sons on the weekends. Despite still being legally married, it was evident to everyone that Alina and I were no longer a couple. She often visited her parents and sister, which didn't bother me. There were no signs of her seeing anyone else, though she had quit her job after the Christmas party and showed no interest in finding another. We never revisited the conversation we had the first night I returned home. Alina fulfilled her role as a devoted mother impeccably. The house was always tidy, the boys well-fed, and they consistently had clean clothes. I handled all the outdoor chores, ensuring the lawn and surroundings were well-maintained. Alana received a weekly allowance of $200 to cover household expenses, groceries, and personal needs. Despite my offer to provide more, she always declined. We no longer relied on credit cards. During Thanksgiving and Christmas, the boys and I spent time with my family, often accompanied by Bella. Alina typically spent the holidays with her own family, but made sure to join us on Christmas Eve to celebrate with the boys. Talking about the relationship between their mom and me got awkward when Harry or Jack brought it up. Both Alina and I refused to talk about it with them. I understood why she didn't want to, but what could she really say? The pretend act continued for years. My short explanations didn't really explain everything. We had lots of problems and arguments, but somehow we got through them. At first, things were good with Bella, but over time, she spent more time with her family in Philly and less with me. I didn't blame her. I was grateful for all she did to make the breakup easier. And as long as the boys were still at home, I couldn't bring myself to ask her to leave. These were self-imposed limitations, but ones I felt compelled to honor. I detested the entire situation, but I couldn't devise an alternative plan. However, the boys found a way to do just that. When Harry was 16, things reached a breaking point. A new student at his school, who happened to be related to my wife's former lover, deliberately provoked Harry about the situation. It was the first time this issue had ever surfaced, catching Harry off guard. Derek's nephew ended up in the hospital, and I received a call to pick up Harry from school. He was suspended for 2 weeks and faced potential assault charges. Unfortunately, Jack witnessed the altercation and insisted on intervening to aid his brother. He ended up losing 2 teeth, but earned Harry's admiration for his support. Upon bringing her sons home, Alina met us at the door. Harry immediately confronted his mother for not being honest with them about the events from years ago. Alina remained silent, offering no defense as her eldest son expressed his anger. Sensing the tension, I took Jack to the dentist, leaving them alone to address their issues. Jack didn't seem too bothered by his missing teeth, but I was concerned about the impending dental expenses. When we returned home, Alina was nowhere to be found. Her car remained parked, but she had left without a word or explanation, leaving Harry bewildered. I took a week off from work to try to calm things down and sort out the situation. Alina's parents and sister didn't talk to me. After a week passed with no word from Alina, we didn't know where she was or what she was planning. Bella and I decided to move into the house together. At first, sharing a bed felt weird, but surprisingly, the boys were okay with it. One day while I was at work, everything that belonged to Alina disappeared from the house. I didn't ask Bella about it, and I didn't want to know. Bella took over all the things Alina used to do without any problems. To make things easier, I gave her some credit cards. It was strange to realize that I trusted my mistress more than my wife. I sold Alina's car and bought a new one for Bella. Family gatherings became less tense with this new arrangement. Bella was happier, and my mother was overjoyed. Harry and Jack experienced no further issues at school, and Derek's nephew never returned. Despite these improvements, I was still legally married. After 2 months of uncertainty regarding Alina's whereabouts, I decided to take action and reported her as a missing person to the police. However, I framed it as a case of a runaway spouse, knowing I could use the report as evidence when filing for divorce, citing abandonment as grounds. I patiently waited 2 more months before submitting the divorce papers, aware that a year of absence was necessary for the divorce to be granted. I was planning ahead, strategizing for the future. Gradually, life in the household settled into a new rhythm. Harry and Jack adapted well to Bella's presence. Even though they didn't call her mom, they preferred to call her Bella, and things got a lot better between us. We started feeling more like a family than we had in a long time. Then, unexpectedly, I got the final divorce papers, ending my marriage. 2 weeks later, Bella and I went to Elkton and got married, making our bond official. Harry graduated from school and joined the Air Force, and a year later, Jack went to meat cutting school in Toledo. Things changed quickly. Before we knew it, Bella and I were alone. Even though we were ready to move on, we never heard from Alina, so we didn't know where she was or what she was planning. Mom and Dad moved to Ocala and asked us to promise to visit them at least twice a year. Since we didn't have strong reasons to stay in Reading, Bella and I decided to go back to Philly. After Jack graduated from school, he got a job at a fancy butcher shop in Westchester. We cherished the moments we spent with him, as he always had something delightful to share whenever we met. A year later, we found ourselves attending one of Bella's niece's weddings, a grand affair typical of Italian celebrations in the city of brotherly love. The event was teeming with guests, mostly family members, along with a sprinkling of opportunists seeking free drinks and food. Nevertheless, the festivities were lively and abundant. During the evening, I noticed Bella displaying a hint of unease, her gaze wandering across the dance floor on several occasions. Though I tried to spot what had caught her attention, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, when she excused herself to visit the restroom, a sense of apprehension washed over me. Observing her as she made her way to the back of the hall, I noticed her meeting up with one of her old friends. Amidst the chatter and socializing, Bella's behavior caught my attention. Instead of heading to the restroom as she initially claimed, she approached one of Luca's assistants, her gestures directed towards a nearby table. There sat 3 guys and 3 girls, looking like they were trying a bit too hard to impress. The girls were adorned in flashy attire, giving off an air of ostentation. Returning to our table, Bella wore a thoughtful yet composed expression. "Marco, we've got a slight issue. I gathered that much from your little reconnaissance mission. Care to elaborate? You need to stay calm. In a few minutes, one of the guys from Janet's table will come over here and try to provoke you." "What do you mean, provoke me?" "He'll likely say some offensive things about me to get a rise out of you. When you react, they'll jump in and attack you. And I'm supposed to just let that happen." "Temporarily, yes. Wait until Thomas and the others are ready. You might need to fend off one of them, but that should be the extent of it." "What exactly do you mean by play along with him?" "Let him insult me and then agree with him. If he calls me a prostitute, ask him how much he's willing to pay. Something like that. But whatever you do, don't let him provoke you." "What's all this about? Why are these guys targeting me?" "Take a look at Janet's table." "Okay, focus on the woman with the short platinum hair." "Got her. Look closer." "Whoa, that's Alina. What's she doing here?" "Alina's boyfriend is connected to the bride in some way. It seems like she's still angry with you and set up this situation to get back at you when she saw you were here. She's probably seeking revenge. While you and Luca's crew handle things here, Janet and I will talk to Alina in the ladies' room. It won't be pleasant." I felt uneasy about what was happening. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, a special night for the bride. It wasn't fair for a couple of troublemakers to ruin it. When I saw Alina's companion getting up from his seat, I stood up and made an excuse to leave the table politely. Bella gave me a curious look, but she seemed to understand the situation. Nonchalantly, I strolled over to the side fire exit, where people were stepping out for a smoke. The boyfriend nodded to his companions to follow. Unseen by them, 3 men emerged from the back of the bar, each wielding a Louisville slugger kept behind the counter. Outside, about half a dozen individuals were puffing away by the fire exit. With a firm tone, I instructed them to leave, and surprisingly, they complied without resistance. There must have been an urgency in my voice. I walked a short distance away and paused, then turned back. The trio emerged, initially smiling, but their expressions quickly soared as the door clicked shut behind them. Their grins vanished upon spotting the 3 bat-wielding figures and the bride's father waiting for them. The altercation ended swiftly, lasting no more than 30 seconds, and I didn't have to resort to violence. Apologies for any inconvenience caused to you and your family on this special evening. I expressed, feeling like a character straight out of a mob movie. Thank you for handling it discreetly, he responded, shaking my hand before returning to his daughter's side. After expressing gratitude to Luca's men for their assistance, I went inside to locate Bella. They remained behind to tidy up the aftermath. Sensing it was time to depart, I couldn't find Bella, and Alina's table was now deserted. Jack, having caught wind of the disturbance, approached me at the bar with some of his friends. "Dad, what's going on?" My initial instinct was to keep quiet, but it failed. "Your mother was here with her new boyfriend." "I don't need to know more," he said with a smile, ordering a beer from the bartender. We talked about other things for about an hour. Eventually, Bella showed up, looking a bit messy. "Where were you?" I asked. She grinned mischievously. "Janet and I had to take your ex-wife to the hospital. She wasn't feeling well." Jack and I couldn't help but laugh. "Marco, can we go home now?" It was a long, eventful night, but filled with laughter. We never encountered Alina again. Bella and I remain happily together in our old neighborhood. Life couldn't be better. Second story. I don't know if my partner cheated on me, but I feel like they have. What do I do? I'm 27 and my partner is 25. So, my partner has been messaging this guy for a while. I wasn't comfortable with it, but I believe people can choose their own friends. I told her I didn't like how much they were messaging, though. One weekend before Valentine's Day in 2024, she was cleaning the kitchen, and I startled her. She quickly grabbed her phone and closed whatever she was doing. I asked her if she had something to hide, and she said no. I asked her to show me, but she refused. I got upset and decided to go for a drive. She started packing her things to stay at her mom's for the night. I didn't mind. The next couple of days were rough, and neither of us slept well on the sofa. It wasn't until Valentine's Day that I got a message from a girl who said that on the Sunday, my partner slept with her in her car. The guy involved confirmed this was true too. My partner denies it, but if it's true, I would have left as soon as I found out. I need advice. Third story. Do you consider sexting cheating? I do. I believe cheating starts in the mind. If you can think it, you can do it. I'll skip a lot of details in this. So I broke up with this guy last year. I found out that he was sexting 3 different girls at the same time. Before we got together, when we got together, and even after we got together, it continued. And then he says he was going to stop the same week I found out, and he wants to do this life thing with me, and that he loves me and wants to get better and can't move on, and even started getting therapy. He has been wanting to get back together for the last few months, but I just can't do it. And he says he didn't have sex with them at all, but that isn't the point, and I don't think it even makes a difference. I opened up to him about how I got cheated on in my relationship before him and how it messed me up, and he assured me, and I tried to be the best I could be for him in all ways. It took a lot for me to move on from this incident, and I forgave him, but I chose to never go back to him or that type of space again, but he keeps coming back. Any thoughts on this? Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon. Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe. Relation Tales. You wanted to see me, Mr. Peterson. Jenkins, yes, come on in. Listen, the system in Toledo is down and those fools have no idea how to fix it. I need you to go down there and get the system back up and running. Okay, but it's Friday. By the time I get there, they'll be closed for the weekend. I told the manager to have someone meet you and be ready to help for as long as you need. Peterson picked up a notebook and tore off the top sheet. This person will meet you at the loading dock behind the building and let you in. I took the note and put it in my pocket. I'll go home, pack my bag, and then leave. That's great. I trust you. When you return, we should talk about what's next for you. I have some important plans for you once Morrison steps down. I smiled at Mr. Peterson. Thank you, sir. I'm excited to discuss it. Okay, now get ready and go. I turned and walked quickly back to my desk. Mark, he's sending me to Toledo, so you'll have to cover me for the rest of the day and for any emergencies over the weekend. My coworker nodded. Of course, there's hardly anything going on today, so I can handle it. It sucks that you have to give up your weekend. I'm sure Amy won't be thrilled. Hurriedly heading to my car, I called my wife Amy. Hey babe, Peterson's sending me on a rescue mission to Toledo. I'm heading home to grab my bag and hit the road. Dan, tomorrow we're having a picnic at my parents' house. We're supposed to spend the weekend there, remember? My brother and both my sisters will be there with all their kids. Shit, I'm sorry, but it can't be helped. I gotta go. Peterson asked me to do this. I'm really sorry. Yeah, I bet you are. Well, the kids and I are at the mall buying new swimsuits, so I guess I'll see you Sunday night. I started to apologize, but soon realized she was done talking and I was just talking to myself. I sighed. Things haven't been going well between us lately, and now she's really angry with me. We just can't seem to catch a break. With my job and taking care of the kids, we hardly ever get any time alone together. We haven't been intimate for over 4 weeks, and now that she's upset with me, it's unlikely to change anytime soon. Maybe if I get Morrison's job, I can reduce my overtime hours. I pulled into my driveway, parked, and quickly went inside. I grabbed a small suitcase, packed a few days' worth of casual clothes and toiletries, and headed back to my car. It usually takes about 2 hours to drive to the factory, but I managed to get there just in time to avoid traffic on a Friday night. Work hours were well past when I pulled into the empty parking lot and headed towards the loading dock. Once parked, I pulled out the paper Peterson had given me. I sent a text message to Sam Matthews to let him know I had arrived. I walked to the back door and rang the bell loudly. It took a couple minutes, but the door finally creaked open. Hi, I'm Sam. You must be Mr. Jenkins. I stared at the woman who spoke with my mouth hanging open. Sam was about 5'6" tall with a mop of dark red hair, green eyes, and an impressive torso, beautifully accentuated by a round neck long-sleeved t-shirt. She smiled radiantly at my confused look. Let me guess, you thought Sam was going to be a guy. I nodded. Yeah, that happens all the time. I just never liked Samantha, so I was always called Sam. Sorry for the confusion. No, it's okay. I held out my hand. I'm Dan Jenkins. Nice to meet you, Sam Matthews, she said as she led me to the back room at the far end of the warehouse floor. As I followed her, I couldn't help but notice her shapely, firm bottom swaying back and forth. Fortunately, I quickly looked away as we approached the door, and she turned to speak to me. I'm sorry we had to page you, Mr. Jenkins, she said. I've only been working here for 2 months, and Mr. Fuller is on vacation in Europe. I tried to reboot the system, but kept getting error notifications, and then the system would shut down again. Please call me Dan. Is it okay if I call you Sam? She nodded and her beautiful red curls scattered around her cute freckled face. Okay, Dan, do you have any ideas? Sam, this system should have been replaced a long time ago, but management doesn't like to spend money on new equipment. The system can be pretty finicky and sensitive to power fluctuations. We had a big storm here the day before yesterday, and it started snowing. Okay, let's open it up and see what's going on. The system was the controller for all the automation units in the warehouse. When it went out, the conveyors stopped, the picking robots died, and all the inventory screens went out. It had been a state-of-the-art system in its day, but its heyday was long past. This was my 3rd visit to Toledo in the last 5 years. If I get promoted, I'll lobby for an upgrade. We worked through various parts of the system trying to find the fault. It wasn't a difficult job, but checking each partition for failures was time-consuming. Newer systems had test ports and some were completely self-checking, but not this old system. After a couple hours, I heard Sam's stomach rumble. She grinned. I worked through my entire lunch and now my stomach is complaining. Do you want to order a pizza or something? Sam, sure, I can always go for pizza. I love pepperoni, but I'll eat anything except anchovies. No fish for me. Pepperoni's my favorite. There's a place down the road that delivers groceries here all the time. I'll call them. We worked until about 9 o'clock. We diagnosed a couple of problems, but I knew there were more to discover. Okay, Sam, let's call it a night. I'm exhausted and I haven't even checked into my hotel yet. Sam stretched, which was quite spectacular, and said, yeah, me too. Sorry, I need to call an Uber. She took her phone out of her back pocket and started tapping on the screen. Wait, I can give you a ride home. No need to call an Uber, she offered. Really, Uber is a bit slow around here, so if it's not too much trouble, I'll accept your offer, I replied. No problem. Where do you live? She asked. I usually stay at the Hyatt off I-75. Great, my apartment's nearby, so it'll be a bit of a detour for you. As we drove, we talked about our day and what might be needed for further testing and repairs. Following Sam's directions, we arrived at a very nice apartment complex. Wow, they look pretty nice. Are they new? I asked. Yes, brand new actually. I'm the only tenant in my building so far. It might be a little messy, but would you like to come in and take a look? Sam offered. Glancing at my watch, I realized it was almost 10 p.m. No, I'd like to, but I should probably head to my hotel. Could you pick me up in the morning? I asked. I'd like that, Sam replied. My SUV is at my brother's and I won't get it back until Sunday night. I'll call you when I'm on my way here, say 9 o'clock. She put a gentle hand on my forearm and squeezed it lightly. Thank you so much. I called Amy as I walked into my room. I apologize for calling so late. It's been a very long day. I guess I'll be back Sunday night. Anyway, the kids are already asleep, so good night. She's passed out. Fucking hell, she hung up on me. I grabbed a $5 bottle of beer from the mini bar and plopped down on the bed. I knew she was upset about me leaving, but I didn't really have a choice. What the hell did she expect me to do? I had a restless sleep, but I managed to get up when my alarm clock rang. I called Sam and she was standing outside when I got to her apartment. Holy shit, she looked so good. She was wearing leggings and a short, tight t-shirt. We worked most of the day and finally got everything running correctly. I ran some additional tests and everything checked out. Sam was a big help and I was pretty sure she could handle any new problems. So are you going back tonight? No, the whole family is away for the weekend at my in-laws, so I think I'll be back tomorrow. Great. Will you let me buy you dinner? You know, if only as a thank you for showing me how to keep this ancient system up and running. No, but I'd be happy to buy you dinner because I have an expense account, I said, and laughed. She agreed, and we went to a local steakhouse and had a delicious dinner. She insisted, and we ended up sharing a nice bottle of 19 Crimes wine. We drove back to her house and I agreed when she invited me to come over for a nightcap. She opened another bottle of wine and we sat on the couch. I excused myself and went into the bathroom to call Amy. The phone rang a few times and I thought it would go to voicemail, but she answered. The kids are playing with their cousins and I won't bother them. I just wanted to say goodnight to them. No, she disconnected. Holy shit, she hung up on me again. What the fuck? I called her back, but this time the message went straight to voicemail. I took a deep breath and tried to pull myself together. I splashed some cold water on my face and took a few more deep breaths. When I got back, Sam was sitting on the couch. Are you okay? I sighed, just trying to deal with an angry wife. She wanted me to be at her parents' party, but the boss sent me here. Apparently she's been unhappy with me for a while, so now I'm really unhappy with her. Dan, I'm sorry to hear that. Doesn't she realize this is just part of your job? I've tried to explain it to her, but she doesn't want to hear it. She's just angry and she's shutting me out. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking to you about my family problems. Maybe I should go. No, please, I want you to stay. Let's have another drink and talk about something else. She grabbed the wine and filled my glass. So you know my problems, so what's going on in your life? Well, there's not much to tell. I broke up a long-term relationship about 3 months ago. Moved here and went to work in a factory. I guess it's kind of a new chapter in my life. Would it be okay if I asked about your breakup? No problem. My boyfriend and I were together for 2 years, but then he got a job in Alabama. I didn't want to move there, but he just assumed I would. He had a week to decide, but he never asked me what I wanted, so we ended things. I'm sorry, that must have been tough, but at least you weren't married with kids, right? I said, feeling a bit bitter. Yeah, we talked about getting engaged, but now I'm glad we didn't. I didn't realize he could be so selfish. I ended things for good, and now I'm in a new place with a new job. Well, that's exciting. Have you made any new friends? None that I was interested in until yesterday when you showed up. Sam quickly brought her hand to her lips. God, maybe I drank too much wine, she said, blushing. I grinned. You've made this trip much more bearable. I've enjoyed your company the last 2 days. I smiled at her beautiful face and she blushed again. She set down her wine glass and moved closer to me. Dan, I've been very lonely here for the past 3 months. These last 2 days have been the most fun I've had in all that time. I know it's wrong, but I'm very attracted to you. Then she leaned over and kissed me. I know I should have pulled away, but I didn't want to. Her lips were soft and she smelled like lavender. I ran my hands over her arms and pulled her to my chest. She responded by kissing me hard and running her hand over my shoulder and through my hair. Her mouth opened and her tongue found mine. I slid my hands down to grasp the edge of her shirt and pulled it off over her head. Her hands began unbuttoning my shirt and then moved to my belt. In a few moments we were naked. Sam, that was fantastic. My God, Dan, I needed that. Thank you. I was so afraid you'd reject me. She kissed me hard and hugged me tightly. Slowly reality began to return to me, and I sat up on the couch. I looked at this beautiful young woman as she came up to sit next to me. Sam, we shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. SHH. She pressed a finger to my lips. I didn't do anything I didn't want to. We're just two exhausted friends who needed some comfort. Thank you, Dan, for giving me a piece of yourself. What happened here tonight will stay just between us. It was a one-time event, and I'm glad it happened. I hugged her and she asked if I wanted to stay. I knew that if I did, we would make love all night long. I reluctantly got dressed, kissed her goodnight and went to my hotel. As I lay in bed, guilt overwhelmed me. I had cheated on my wife. I was angry at Amy and I was horny as hell and Sam wanted me. God, it felt so good to be desired by a beautiful young woman, but this was wrong. Shit, what am I going to do now? On the drive home, I ran it through my head. Should I tell Amy and apologize? If so, when should I tell her? She's already very angry with me. This would certainly drive her to the edge. Maybe I should wait and tell her after I get promoted and our life gets back on track. But then, wouldn't she blow up because I kept it from her and didn't tell her right away? What if I just don't tell her? Can I do that? Can I keep it from her? Would I be able to deal with the guilt? But what would happen if she somehow found out? She would be crushed, just as I would be crushed if she did this to me. Shit. I drove into the garage, grabbed my bag, and entered the house. Amy was in the kitchen, leaning on the counter. I put down my bags and walked up to her. She looked at me, and a tear fell from her eye. I'm really sorry. I treated you badly, especially by involving the kids. It was wrong from all angles, she said. I talked to my mom about us, and she helped me see I was being selfish. Dan, I love you so much. Can you forgive me? As she spoke, I hugged her, comforting her. When she finished, I held her at arm's length. I love you too, honey. Let's forget this weekend happened and promise never to bring it up again, I said. Her face lit up with a smile, and she agreed. I carried her to our bed, and she mentioned the kids were staying at her mom's, so we had the night to ourselves. It turned out we had all night and morning because I called Peterson, and he was happy to give me the night off. It's been 25 years since I lost my way, and I never did it again. We never reminisced about that weekend or my trip. And although I still get remorseful from time to time, I'm glad I didn't tell her anything. Second story, I hooked up with my colleague in a long-term relationship. I'm a 19-year-old woman who works with a guy named Ben, who's 24. We've been working together for a few months now. Our work dynamic has been a bit strange from the beginning. It started with some playful teasing and compliments from him, like saying I'm the most beautiful girl in the office. I think he's good looking, and we get along well, but I've known all along that he has a girlfriend. We've gone out for drinks with other coworkers a few times, and I've even met his girlfriend. At a staff party a few months ago, we were both really drunk, and he confessed that he really likes me and would be with me if he didn't have a girlfriend. At that time, I was already in a relationship, so I basically said the same thing back to him, and we left it at that. But his confession has stuck with me since then. Honestly, if he wasn't in a relationship, I might be interested, but I've never considered taking it further than just flirting. This past weekend, a big group of work people went out and Ben was there. Ben and I were drunk and had a heart-to-heart in a club about how he thinks about me a lot and wishes he was single. I agreed and told him I liked him, but obviously we couldn't do anything. Long story short, we all got very drunk. A few of us went back to Ben's house to chill, and Ben and I ended up in the bathroom making out and with me giving him a BJ. It was fun, I won't lie, but as soon as it happened I had to call a cab to go home because I felt so horrible. Not only have I met his girlfriend, she was asleep in the room next door. I've never ever thought I'd be the kind of girl to do this to another woman, and I have no clue where to go from here. I have to go back to work tomorrow and see Ben, so I guess we'll see what happens. We both agreed to keep it between us, but I feel absolutely disgusting. This was basically just a rant. I apologize. TLDR, hooked up with my coworker whose girlfriend I've met while she was asleep in the next room, and feeling extremely horrible about it. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more compelling tales with you. Until next time, remember, every relationship has a story worth telling. See you soon.